It's Empire of the Cop Insider. We're back again with the lovely Neil Jones of covering Liverpool. Less savoury news we've got to cover this time, I'm afraid, because it is, of course, Liverpool's FA Cup quarter-final defeat at Old Trafford by 4-3. Just the two remaining competitions to play for in the League and Europa League after Liverpool fell out of the FA Cup at Old Trafford. And I do say fell, Neil, because it seemed that we dominated the game for significant periods, especially looking again, a similar story at the second half. And while you can't say that you leave that feeling you deserve to win, having conceded 4 goals, Liverpool didn't quite deserve to lose in the same way I felt that they deserved to lose at the Emirates in the league. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but I suppose similarly to the Emirates game, I would say that they would look at the defeat as being a bit self-inflicted. The game was in their hands, really, wasn't it? And I know United had good chances and could have won it in the 90 minutes, obviously, with Rashford's big chance. And like you say, when you score 4 goals, you sort of feel like you've probably earned your victory. But I do feel that if Liverpool had been closer to their real top level, especially in the final third, I think they would have won the game relatively comfortably. And I think that will be the big frustration. I think Virgil van Dijk posted on social media, didn't he? He said, we've only got ourselves to blame. And that was the feeling I took away from it, really. And I watched it in a very different setting to normal. I wasn't in the press box. I wasn't even watching sort of at home on TV. I was out and about on a weekend away. But I think everyone who was watching it around me sort of took the same thing out of it, really, that Liverpool missed their opportunity to kill that game off in certainly in the second half, and not necessarily through missing huge chances, in front of goal. It was more failing to create huge chances with breakaway situations and failing to make the most of, real big spaces on the pitch. I mean, even in extra time, you look at Manchester United ended up with Anthony playing left back and Bruno Fernandes playing alongside Harry Maguire at centre back, and you think that really should be ripe for the taking, really, shouldn't it, for Liverpool? And they didn't do it. They paid the price late on with a breakaway goal against them, and I think they'll come away from it. Not necessarily. I don't think it'll be too damaging in the long term, personally, or even the short term. But I think once this season's over, and we don't know how it'll finish and where Liverpool end up, how many trophies or how few trophies, or where how much pain or glory they feel, I think they would look at this game, and say, that was one that we really should have took care of. And as it turns out, they would have been playing Coventry in the semi-final and been, having a big chance to go to another final. So I think they will see it as an opportunity missed, if not necessarily, the biggest sort of game to come in the next few weeks.
I mean, yeah, you've rightly mentioned the lack of sort of cutting edge there, the breakaway goal at the end when everyone is thrown up for that corner, when you still think Liverpool could potentially, I mean, ideally you want to win the game, but Liverpool could still go to penalties. And we've got history, certainly in the FA Cup, when it comes to being victorious in the shootouts. I mean, we can talk about that. We can talk about the game management. Do we have to consider, is it purely just one of those where you go, Liverpool weren't at it? Or do you have to factor in sort of tiredness in the squad? You're looking at Liverpool played 46 games so far. The key players still missing? Or is it just purely in isolation of itself?
Yeah, I think maybe as the longer the game went on, I think that becomes a factor. I think I heard the statistic before the game. It was Liverpool's 18th game of 2024, Manchester United's 12th. And obviously that comes from success and being in Europe still. I think that maybe becomes a thing as you get to extra time. And I think Jürgen, some of his comments were fair enough. He said, we didn't really have the subs there this time, did we? Or we had too many players that we probably needed to take off. And, he mentioned 3, obviously, afterwards, that picked up issues during the game. I think it was clear that Salah, Szoboszlai, probably Robertson couldn't have done 120 minutes or some of them didn't even do 90 minutes. But then I also look at that Sparta Prague game on Thursday and think there was a few players there that done a few minutes longer than I expected them to. Obviously, Salah did 90 in the end due to circumstance. And you look and you think, well, if you're gonna use sort of fixtures and tiredness and fatigue as an excuse, then yeah, you maybe painting yourself into a corner by going so strong in a game when you're 5-1 up in. But that's I still think Liverpool should have taken care of the game, and we're not having this conversation. That's the flip side of it. Even allowing for all these issues and these excuses, if you like, or reasons for Liverpool's failure, they still should have won, and they still should have been in the semi-finals, and they still should have recorded a big win. So I think it is. Look, we're 2 days on from it, aren't we, nearly? And I am still. I think a lot of people are still very frustrated about it and very disappointed because it was at Old Trafford. It was a quarter-final. Obviously, the draw subsequently, the idea of the quadruple. But I do think Liverpool have earned a little bit of leeway to say, that was just one of those games that, should have won, didn't win, move on. Just a shame it's, it's 12, 13 days now, isn't it, before they're allowed to move on.
No, that's the thing. I think it's like you said, isn't it? If we come to the end of the season and hopefully if you lift like the Europa League and Premier League, you might go, we were so close to sort of a historical fairy tale finish. But the flip side of that, of course, is that you end up having the league, the Europa League and the Carabao Cup, and that's still an absolutely fantastic trophy haul to sort of end the season.
And also, I think what I'll do is it does just remind you a little bit. And I think we all get carried away in obviously Liverpool's incredible capacity to dig results out. But it reminds you how thin the margins are and how tight the rope is, really, that Liverpool are dangling from. There is the possibility that we get, and I hate to raise this, but there is the possibility we get to the end of the season and the League Cup is all Liverpool won. And people say, well, well done. You competed for the quadruple. You didn't win anything. You came second in the league. You lost in the Europa League final or whatever it is. It's not always terrible to be reminded of that fact that we are living in sort of remarkable times where you use that. I don't think you used it in a sort of a negative way, but you said only 2 trophies left to play for, and you think, how many seasons have we been involved in where the idea of playing for 2 trophies on the 19th of March was a distant sort of dream. So I think it is nice sometimes to be reminded that Liverpool are in a special position, really, and they are giving their fans something to really dream about. And look, the best Liverpool teams, probably the best Liverpool team of all time, potentially the one that came closest to the treble, it lost in the FA Cup to Manchester United, didn't it? It was that. So the best Liverpool teams of all time could lose FA Cup games against Manchester United. So for me, I don't sort of. I'm determined not to read too much into it, rather than just saying it was a really frustrating sort of way to lose an important game.
I mean, speaking of the FA Cup and Manchester United and stats, I saw one, I think it was yesterday, it might have been from Michael Reed, who was sort of saying that the last time Liverpool lost in an FA Cup clash against United, they went on to win the league in 1990.
No, it was the last time they lost 4-3 in the FA Cup. It was
that's the one,
Crystal Palace in 1990 in the semi-final, So, yeah, exactly. Although, to be fair, that was the last time they won the league for an awful long time as well. But yeah, look, there's always silver linings, and at least in Liverpool's case, that wasn't their season on the line. If Liverpool beat Manchester United in that game 4-3, that's Manchester United's season up in smoke, isn't it? So I think at least Liverpool have some fallback, games to come and some trophies to compete for and some things to enjoy in the next, 2 months of the season.
I mean, the good news is, of course, is that it can be seen as a bad point, but the international break is here upon us, and it gives the squad time maybe to think about it, but also to regroup, recover, and shake off the hurt inflicted at Old Trafford. Perhaps it even goes as far as sort of encouraging the squad really to get the result they want when we play United again at Old Trafford right in early April. Because if you were to ask everyone, and obviously this is all very well easy saying in hindsight, which would you rather win? Would you rather beat Old Trafford on the way to winning the league, or beat them Old Trafford on the way to winning the cup? You'd say the league, and that is the big. We've had this, the reverse way, sort of with the Emirates, got through the FA Cup and lost in the league. But it'd be. I mean, I'm looking at the fixtures sort of remaining, and the one that really sticks out for me, I don't know if it's just the hurt talking, but it is United. That's potentially season to fight. You can argue for Tottenham at Anfield. You can argue for Villa away at the end of the season if it's looking tight in the top 4 race. Everton at Goodison, depending on when the fixtures replay is postponed to and whether they're involved still in a relegation scrap. But United is the one I specifically look at and think you have to be winning that one.
Yeah. I look at the next 3 actually. Obviously, I think we all we all trust Liverpool at Anfield, don't we? We all trust them in home games. But those next two, Brighton and Sheffield United, and then leading into Manchester United, I think there's a chance for Liverpool to put themselves in a real strong position in these next three games. And that United game, you're absolutely right. And I had a couple of messages of people, Liverpool fans who, I always debrief games with, and one of them said, they went the opposite way. They said, this really gives United sort of a belief now that, they can really put the spanner in Liverpool's season, and, they can kill them in two competitions. But for me, my sort of feeling about this Liverpool team is it doesn't make the same mistake twice, and it doesn't, it learns from its mistakes, even within games an awful lot of time. If it has a bad first half, it comes out and corrects it in the second half. If it has a struggle against the team, it tends to right that struggle and find a way through it. So I have a lot of faith in Liverpool that they will go with a little bit extra sort of focus or determination to sort of, to do what they didn't do at Old Trafford. And let's not forget, United will get a lot of praise. And listen, I actually don't disagree with the praise they got. They really battled hard, and a few players performed really well. And they scored 4 against Liverpool, which is not easy to do. And they came from behind and showed a lot of character, all those things. But they're not a great side, Manchester United. They're not a side that you look at and go, when they're on it, you can't cope with them. They're a side that you look at and go, even when they play well, even when they sort of can score 4 goals, you could, if you play properly, you can beat them quite comfortably. And Liverpool know that even United, with the home crowd, with their season on the line, even with certain players performing at their level, Liverpool had the chances to go and win that game, and they had lots and lots of them, and they should have taken advantage of them. So for me, I don't view it with sort of, I view it more as an opportunity for Liverpool, and a big one. But I think there will be a lot of sort of callbacks to this game on Sunday when they go to Old Trafford on the 7th, is it, of April. I think there'll be a lot of callbacks as to don't let them off the hook. Don't be sort of trying to score the perfect goal. Be more precise with your pass. Kill them off. Put your foot on their throat, because that's what Liverpool didn't do on Sunday, and it cost them. If it was to cost them in the Premier League, and listen, we are at the stage now where one defeat, maybe even a draw, can prove costly come the end of the season. If it is to cost them with losing the FA Cup and the league at Old Trafford, essentially, that would be a real tough one to take for the fans, certainly, and for a lot of the players and the manager.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, let's shake off the results and move on to sort of more positive matters sort of behind the scenes. Obviously, the big news story is FSG accomplished what they set out to do and brought Michael Edwards back to the club, albeit in a more sort of higher up capacity and overarching role as CEO of football. I mean, I remember when we were sort of talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and it sort of seemed that, you were like, oh, well, this story has come out, FSG, the club probably didn't want this to come out, but ultimately we've got what we wanted. It's the promise of stability in a potential time of instability after Jurgen Klopp leaves. I mean, what were your feelings at the time when this sort of came out? Was it sort of calmness, surprise? What was going through your head?
Yeah, I mean, I think when the story reappeared after the initial sort of approach, I mean, when the first one approached, I think that was just after Jurgen had announced he was going to leave. That was at the end of January, wasn't it? And it came out, I thought, oh, that's a bit strange, and it was sort of dismissed out of hand. And I thought, oh, well, they've just tried the hand, and that's that, game over. But when the story sort of reappeared, and it was, Liverpool are still hoping to convince, or Michael Edwards could still be convinced, I thought that there's a good chance of this. You sort of think, well, definitely someone wants this to happen, don't they? And usually when someone wants it to happen, it does. I think it's a good move for Liverpool. I think it's good news for Liverpool in a really difficult summer off the field. I think it's a real positive development. And I spoke to a few people at the club last week, and they were in agreement that there was the propensity there, obviously, for so much change to mean that you need a lot of time to sort of readjust to new ways and new people and new relationships and new processes, but also there's the possibility that some of those changes just don't work, and that they don't, they're not the right people, or they're not the right fit, or they don't work together. I think with Michael Edwards at the helm, I think FSG have got someone who they know that they can trust there. his judgment. They know that they can trust the work that he does and the processes that he has and the people that he knows. And when Michael Edwards says that, look, this guy's the best sporting director in Richard Hughes, he was obviously recommended. There's a new story recently about Pedro Marquez, who's at Benfica, the technical director, who's Liverpool have got a past with as well. When he says these people are the guys we need to help us on our way, they can trust that, and that's I think that's important. And obviously, the next step will be to trust his judgment, or certainly his feedback, his opinion, his contacts with regards to a new manager. And I think it makes it a lot easier to do it than having either Mike Gordon doing it or having a new sporting director or a new head of football, who's coming from outside or is, still learning the sort of the ropes, or English football or all those things. I think it's a lot easier to sort of to trust Liverpool's position now with Michael Edwards at the helm.
I mean, you mentioned about Pedro Marquez as well. It's quite impressive that we've gone from no one to Michael Edwards, the sporting director, all being potentially boxed off, and the beginnings of a framework to slot into another club that FSG might add to their sporting stable. In terms of the multi-club sort of ownership model, obviously Liverpool would be looking at this potentially more in line with what maybe Brighton are doing than Manchester City. It's a lot of catch up you have to do to Manchester City, almost too much to do in the space of a year, 5 years, or even I don't know, going towards a decade. But what are you? Because it has divided fans. I think the concern is that no one wants to see Liverpool benefit to the detriment of another club. But then I suppose my point of view is, this is the direction football is going in, and Liverpool don't want to be left behind. And B, you can be assured with certainly Edwards and certainly the looks of the people that we are sort of scouting out, as it were, to slot into a new club that we buy. It will be a very well run club. This isn't just going to be the case of Liverpool using and abusing to the detriment of another outfit, is it?
Yeah, I would hope so. And I know Liverpool have had relationships with clubs in the past, not formalised, but certainly good sort of terms with clubs, and very strong links in Portugal, which is, I wouldn't be at all amazed if that's where Liverpool was sort of planted their flag a little bit, first of all. But I don't like it. I have to say, I don't like where modern football is with things like this, and it does speak to the state of modern football, that money is so prevalent in a handful of clubs, really, in a handful of leagues, and it almost feels like the rest just sort of are subservient to that. But you're right. I mean, one, everyone else does it, but two, you would hope that Liverpool do it in a way that isn't kind of stealing the soul of the club. We're not going to sort of change their badge, you hope, and start making them play in red, and rename them Liverpool Belenenses or whatever you want to call them. You would hope it's not that kind of takeover, but it does obviously. You have to appreciate the supporters of that club as well, and do they want to be a feeder club for a Premier League club, albeit one of the biggest in the world? I do see the sort of the dilemma there, and I personally I fall on the idea that I don't really like multi-club ownership. I don't really like the whole concept of it, whilst unfortunately accepting that sometimes the devil needs to be danced with.
No, absolutely. I think it's an unfortunate one, isn't it? I think if we could choose to not have it, we wouldn't have it, and everyone would be sort of playing on a more sort of level playing field.
I think. Sorry, I'll just to continue. I think obviously Liverpool's aim is getting players, isn't it, and developmental purposes. So getting players, ideally, I'm guessing from areas where you'd need to give them that buffer. Portugal's obviously been a real good breeding ground for Liverpool in terms of getting players. Luis Diaz and Darwin Nunez, for example, and they need that kind of first step before they go to a top European club. I say a top European club, a top European league. I think that will be important. Obviously, work permit issues and things like that are less prevalent, but still, important, but also having the ability to maybe send young players there and loan players out. Obviously, Chelsea are probably the best example of that in the past with Tessan, and obviously City have got that with, or had that with Girona, and various other clubs as well. I have to admit, I didn't realise Brighton had such a close link with obviously with Union Saint-Gilloise, obviously who Liverpool played with. I mean, that's a very interesting one, because obviously they've been successful, haven't they? Obviously Union, in terms of getting into Europe and moving forward. But I think I can see the benefits for Liverpool clearly, and obviously Michael Edwards made it clear, didn't he, that was the big sort of sell for him, really, wasn't it? That he was going to be in charge of his own club almost. He was going to, or his own stable of clubs. But I can also see why, if you were a traditionalist and if you were a supporter of a club that was going to be taken over by Liverpool's or by FSG, you would at the very least have some concerns about the soul of your club and whether it was sort of the right thing to be happening. But listen, modern football, there's a lot of things I don't like that happen in modern football. VAR, we'll talk about that. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what most fans say. Unfortunately, football wants what football gets.
No, sadly so. But at least I suppose there are moments in between, certainly whilst we've had the manager that we've had, that really makes supporting Liverpool worthwhile. I mean, we're talking about the manager. I do want to talk a little bit sort of about the future beyond, because we've boxed off Michael Edwards. Richard Hughes looks pretty much dead set to come in as a sporting director. It's Edwards' choice. So I suppose the thing now really is the next manager at Liverpool Football Club that really now expedites the process. We've seen in Europe that Ruben Amorim's Sporting, Roberto De Zerbi's Brighton both sadly crashed out the Europa League, but it was Xabi Alonso's indomitable Bayer Leverkusen that pulled through against Karabag to secure progress. Again, we're in this position that we have been last week, last month, the month before that. You can't 100% guarantee that you're going to get Alonso. You have to be respectful to his part in this, Leverkusen's part in this. But as a Liverpool fan, you have to be looking at a European comeback and sort of thinking, that looks like a Liverpool manager to me. Yes, please, we'll have some of that.
100%. I was thinking that I was actually at the Sparta Prague game on Thursday, and you're just sort of sitting in the press box, and just every so often someone will just shout up a result. Or West Ham, or I think West Ham had already played actually, but whatever games were on, Marseille were getting beat. They had a bit of a scare at Villarreal, didn't they? Where they were a couple down, and people were just sort of every so often say, "Oh, there's been a goal there." Villa are beating Ajax in the Conference League, and someone shouted, "Oh, Leverkusen 2-0 down against Karabag," and I thought, "Woof, really?" Wow, okay. And then someone said, "Oh, Karabag are down to 10 men," and I think there must have been about 20 minutes to go, I would imagine, at this point. Obviously, Liverpool game was dead and buried, so you sort of, you're not overly sort of invested in what's happening on that pitch. You're obviously watching the game, but you're not. There's no jeopardy there. But I said to the person next to me, I said, "They'll still win." I said, "Leverkusen will still win," and they sort of said, and I said, "Well, they were 2-0 down the first leg," but I don't know where I don't know where that gets created, but that's what my feeling was at the time. I thought even 2-0 down, they won't lose. And to me, maybe I didn't think they'd win in 90 minutes, by the way, but I thought they'd win the tie. And then when someone says to me, I was just about to do my YouTube video after the end of the Liverpool game, actually, and I was just sort of setting up in the row behind, and someone said, "Oh, do you know Leverkusen got a 90 whatever minute winner?" I said, "Winner?" I said, I thought it took it to extra time. I said, "Oh no, they scored twice in extra time." And I just sort of, you shake your head, but that was what crossed my mind. I thought, that's a bit Liverpool. That there must be people in Germany saying, "Oh, them again." What is it with this team? Why don't they know when they're beaten? And I think about their fans, Leverkusen fans, about the sort of the thrills that they must be getting. We don't normally associate maybe. We associate German supporters with incredible support and sort of the noise and the demonstrations and the activism and all those things and the atmosphere they create. And we don't necessarily sort of think about the emotional ride that we go on, in that sense. And I I just think what must they be experiencing this season? You know, so many late goals, obviously going everywhere, wherever they go in Europe, wherever they go in Germany, they must think we're going to win today. And I just think that is such a good preparation for a manager who wants to go manage one of the biggest clubs in the world. And listen, that might be Bayern, it might be Liverpool, but I just think he's taken an awful lot of boxes for Liverpool at the moment. I think if you want to be Liverpool manager, you've got to win a lot of games. You've got to win trophies. You've got to get, you know, a connection with supporters, and you've got to create a team that fights and, you know, and can play. And he's clearly created a team that can play, and he's clearly created a team that can fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, when you're sort of analysing the sort of the landscape as well, I think one of Bayern's selling points at the time were, you know, that's what they would have been arguing is, well, we've got a complete sort of setup back room. We just need the new manager sort of coming in. You know, you brought in Eberl, you've got Christoph Freund, but you know, now Liverpool are in a situation where we've got Edwards in. Hughes is boxed off. You know, we're kind of at that stage now where we're ready to sort of formally begin talks for a new manager.
I'm interested. Sorry, just in your thoughts. I mean, I sort of said. Someone when the draw was made on Sunday and people were saying, "Oh, you know, glad we avoided Leverkusen." I actually think that I think I want Liverpool to play Leverkusen over two legs. I think I might want Alonso to come to Anfield and sort of feel the love a little bit, and you know, I'm not sure he needs it, but just a reminder really that this is a place. You know, I'd love a second leg. You know, Liverpool semi-final. I'd have loved the semi-final second leg against, you know, Bayer Leverkusen for Liverpool. Would have been unbelievable, wouldn't it? You know, imagine coming there with the game in the balance. So I wouldn't say I was hoping for Leverkusen, but I wouldn't have been upset if Liverpool had got it. I think the draw, by the way, we should talk about the draw, but I think the draw has worked out quite well for Liverpool, obviously in all facets. But I wouldn't have been at all disappointed had Liverpool got Bayer Leverkusen in quarters or semis.
I think the route is quite generous. I know I've seen that there's been like power rankings and all that have Atalanta down as like the third most difficult team you can get or something. But my first impression was straight to the final. That's quite a generous, you know, not gentle, but you know, probably one of the best routes you could really have asked for. And
the trip's not a tough one either. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not a Roma away game or a Marseille away game, which for supporters could be, you know, can be a bit dangerous and fraught, obviously, as we saw with Brighton in Rome. So it's less of a sort of a high profile kind of trip as well, isn't it?
I think as well, I get your point as well about having him sort of come to Anfield and sort of getting that reminder. But I do also think, well, if the final's held in Dublin, you know what I mean? The majority of support there is going to be of a red persuasion, shall we say. So whilst it's not perhaps the perfect reminder, it is a very good reminder of just how, you know, of Liverpool's reach, of, you know, that sort of emotional connection. You know, one way or another, he's going to get a very strong reminder about what it means to be a Liverpool manager, to be around this side, you know, certainly in the Jurgen Klopp sort of era. I think, you know, the romantic in me does quite like the idea of a Leverkusen-Liverpool final. I think whichever, you know, obviously we want Liverpool to be winning that, absolutely. But you just think, you know, whichever way that sort of ends, he gets a taste of, you know, being around Liverpool, being around that sort of fan base. And I think if he comes away from that experience and doesn't think, you know, I might quite like returning here, to be honest. I've missed this a bit. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time he said he's talked about Liverpool. He's talked about missing Liverpool and his experience there. So, yeah, I do see the point, but I think, I don't know, I do quite like the idea of like a Liverpool Leverkusen final.
I mean, to be fair, he's got to get past Moisey and West Ham first, hasn't he? And I think that's a good. I think that'll be a good test for him. I think that'll be. I think we always maybe have that little English arrogance in us that, you know, there's a side doing well on the continent, but where would they finish in the Premier League? We sort of, you know, we always have that kind of mindset a little bit, don't we? So I think that will be a good test for Leverkusen. You know, that again, you know, I think we'd all like to see West Ham out. I don't think we want to play West Ham in a European final just for logistics, but also just it's not a European final, is it? You know, thing. But I think that will be a good benchmark of where Leverkusen are, and of course, what they've got coming up potentially is a couple of weeks where they've got no competitive games almost because the league could be wrapped up, nice and early. They've obviously got 10 points already on Bayern Munich. There's, they could have 3 or 4 games at the end of the season where they're having to just tick over and get ready for the final or the semi-final. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they handle this last few weeks. They don't look like they're giving up yet, do they? They had a narrow win at the weekend over at Freiburg, didn't they? They won 3-2. They've had a couple of late wins, obviously, in the Bundesliga in recent weeks, and they had a late win, obviously, in the Europa League. So yeah, they're definitely still on the bike and still producing big moments.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to end this with a slight bit of a guessing game with you, Neil, because I mean, again, we can't 100% guarantee anything, but I suppose they are on the cusp of history. We're talking about a team that has the nickname Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. The expectation is very much, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But they could end the season feasibly being at least, Bundesliga champions, potentially having the DFB Pokal to their name as well, potentially the Europa League to their name. Does that help or hinder Liverpool? Because I was trying to think about this myself the other day, and I was thinking, would Alonso be more tempted to come away having gone, well, I've done that. I've achieved the impossible theoretically at Leverkusen.
Yeah.
I can comfortably move on feeling like I've given enough to the club. Or is that going to give him more of a taste? Or is he going to go? Because it's always the question of the second season, isn't it? Jurgen Klopp managed it for Dortmund, and I suppose it'll be the question on him. Can he do that once Bayern presumably get in their Tuchel replacement? Can he repeat that level of success? Or is it, is it the case that he's going to look at the Liverpool job and think this isn't going to come around again next year? They're just going to hire someone else.
Yeah, you say it is a guessing game, but my guess would be that I would be far more in the camp that he'd leave Bayer Leverkusen this summer than that would be my least likely outcome for him, that he'd stay at Leverkusen. And I see, listen, you want to take the team into the Champions League, you want to test yourself. I look at Napoli this season, and I look and I say, well, I know it's a different manager, and I know they changed their manager after winning it, but there would have been a lot of people saying, no, let's turn this into an era. Let's make this sort of, let's go and prove it again. It's very difficult if you're not one of the established teams, because what the established teams do when they don't win is they go and make themselves stronger, and they come back and they grind you into the dirt. Really, they make sure that you don't get a chance to sort of laugh at them again. So I think that would be very, very difficult. Like you say, Bayern Munich would be strong again. I'm guessing Leverkusen, okay, maybe they might be better seeded, obviously as German champions and their coefficients and things like that. But they would still get a tough Champions League draw. You imagine it would be difficult. Obviously, there's new pressures then when you're coming from playing Champions League football and Bundesliga games. You're obviously the extra respect that you've gained and the way the teams approach. I think it would be difficult. Listen, if he was to do it, it would just underline his credentials that he is a special manager, isn't it? But I think with the opportunities that are going to be available this summer, I think it's too right here and right now for him, isn't it? That I think that he needs to take one of those opportunities. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, he might feel differently, and he's his own man. But I think he'd be taking a bigger risk staying at Leverkusen than he would going to either Liverpool or Bayern. I think it would be a more natural decision for him to do one of those two.
No, absolutely. No, I'd be agreed on that point. I hope it's not sort of a Liverpool bias on my end and optimism, but certainly.
And it's no, look, it's no disrespect to Bayer Leverkusen. I understand. They're the ones who pay his wages. They're the ones who employ him. He's got his contract, but they probably didn't imagine they'd be here. But they must have known that if he has success, but he's not coming to manage Bayer Leverkusen for the rest of his career. It's a stop-off point, isn't it? They've done it with many players in the past. You think of that great side that they had. They beat Liverpool, obviously, in the quarterfinals of the Champions League 2002, reached the final. They had Michael Ballack, Lucio, Zé Roberto, Dimitar Berbatov, all these players. They all knew if they do well, that's thank you very much, and they move on, don't they? Some clubs that's the way they operate, isn't it? And a little bit not dissimilar, but Dortmund had the same, didn't they? You know, they had success and they knew that they were going to lose players. They lost Goetze, they lost Lewandowski, they lost Kagawa, they lost Hummels, they lost Gundogan, they lost Sahin. He was one of the first who went, wasn't he? So I think there'd be an acceptance there. I don't think he would leave with Bayer Leverkusen fans sort of saying, "Oh, you've sold us down the river." I think surely there would be an acceptance that you've done a pretty good job for us, and you've earned your shot, especially with the emotional connection that he might have to Bayern or to Liverpool.
No, absolutely. It seems like a nice, positive place to leave this latest episode of Empire of the Crop Insider. We've had the lovely Neil Jones of Covering Liverpool, and I've been your host, Farrell Keeling. If you enjoyed all this, you can catch all of Neil's work, of course, on Twitter, or X as it's currently known, at Neil Jones Goal, or on his Substack with Covering Liverpool at neilj.substack.com. We'll have all the good bits on our own Substack as well. That's empireofthecrop.substack.com. It's been a 4-3 defeat to Manchester United in the FA Cup, but there is still plenty left for Liverpool to do to make this a nice fairy tale ending for Jurgen Klopp's season. I think we can all hold on to that moving forward.